Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who just joined, if you haven't already, please mute your microphones. If you need to speak, if you need to say something, feel free to unmute yourself. But for the purposes of this workshop, I'm going to treat this like a webinar, not a discussion. So this is more of a workshop than a meeting. I'm going to talk about a lot of different things, and I'm going to throw a lot of information at you. If you have questions, please type them into the chat, and anything that we don't have time to answer during this workshop, I will follow up with you personally. That's why I've asked you to enter your first and last names so that I know who to follow up with. And then, especially for faculty, but also for staff, I recommend you take notes. In case you haven't noticed over the last week and a half, things have been changing very quickly. And I'm going to throw a lot of information at you, and I'm probably going to change directions repeatedly throughout this presentation. So please take notes. And also, please be flexible. What I say today may change tomorrow. It may change before we're done with this workshop. So take notes and be ready to change them as we go. So without further ado, I see there are 32 people online, and we have now 5 people in the room with me. Thank you all for coming. It has been a bit of a whirlwind of late here at UT, and I know there's a lot of questions that y'all have. I'm going to cover a lot of information. I'm going to try to answer as many of your questions as I can, but this is just a beginner workshop. This is an introduction, as much for staff as for faculty, but mostly for faculty, to begin getting used to using Zoom and to begin thinking about all of the various things we will need to consider as the next week and a half progress and we prepare to move to teaching online. So a little bit of housekeeping as I go through. A couple of you have already asked, and as more people come in, the question may arise or show up in the chat. This session is going to be recorded, as will every future workshop that I host, whether it's, today, next week, next month, whatever. One of the great things about Zoom is we can record it easily. As I mentioned, things are evolving very quickly, and we are all learning as we go, including me. Thankfully, the school started using Zoom in the summer, so quite a few of our faculty and some of our staff are already well-versed in using Zoom, and the rest of us get to catch up. It's all part of the adventure. Another thing I want to reiterate, and I will probably say this again, you are not alone, and we can do this. You do not have to do this by yourself. There are lots of people in the school who have already reached out to me to say that they would be more than happy to serve as resources, whether it's to help you learn how to use Zoom or to help you modify your class to get ready for online teaching. We are always flexible. That's one of the things I have learned seems to be universal about nurses, and we will continue to be flexible and creative as we go through. And in case you haven't noticed, resources are being constantly developed and posted online. Some of those resources may be a little bit overwhelming just in terms of the fact that they're coming so frequently. That is unfortunately the situation in which we find ourselves. I'm going to try to show you some resources to make it easier for you to sort of filter out the noise that you maybe can ignore. But there's a lot of resources coming out every day as we are all 70,000 of us at UT Austin, figuring out how to go online starting on the 30th. So there's a lot of information. Like I mentioned, taking notes is a good idea. I do not expect anyone to remember everything that I said. I don't even remember what I said 5 minutes ago. So if you forget something from this workshop, you will not hurt my feelings. So moving on. Before I get into the details, a note about IT support. I already mentioned this. Everything is changing quickly and things are up in the air. And one of the difficulties of my position here in the School of Nursing is this. I am not the IT guy. I will do everything in my power to provide you with all of the support that I can. And, not saying but, saying and, LAITS are the people that we need to go to for support with IT. So there on the screen you see their number, it's 512-471-5000, or LAITS laits-help@utexas.edu. Zoom questions specifically should go to zoom@utexas.edu. And I want to add a big caveat here. I'm not the IT guy. I understand that there is a huge gray area for all of you, myself included, between what's my job and what's Lates' job. It's not always clear, even to me. So I don't expect you to always know. If you don't know, don't worry about it. Don't overthink it. If you're unsure, send your questions to me and to Lates. Otherwise, as a general rule of thumb, one thing you can keep in mind.
Hey, Sean, real quick, the number for Lates is not on screen, and I don't think the slides are advancing. Just
Okay, what do you see on the screen, Vin?
just the first, just the cover screen, just the cover slide. I think other people are experiencing the same thing.
Okay, thanks, Vin. I'm going to escape out of this, and we're going to start over. Thank you for letting me know.
Okay.
You see the slideshow now?
Other software tools such as
Okay, hang on. What do you see right now?
Zoom Basics, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 with all the other, what we would cover.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me know, Vin. I appreciate that. If this isn't
Now, yeah.
If this isn't
Now
a good
we're at, I am not the IT guy.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Vin.
All right.
I think that's as good an example as I could hope for of we are all figuring this out as we go. So please be flexible, remain calm. Things are going to move forward, sometimes whether we like it or not. Okay. It also looks like my webcam might not be projecting. Bear with me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. Oh, nope, that's the desktop webcam. 1 second. Okay, that's more like it. Okay. For someone who just came in, if you haven't already, please go ahead and mute your microphone. Those of you who, in case anyone isn't, you can stop video on your end. I'm just going to repeat this message a few times. If you have questions, you can type them into the chat. Anything I don't have time to answer today, I will follow up with you one-on-one. Okay. So to back up a little bit, if you're not sure who to send your questions to, don't worry about it. Don't overthink it. I don't want you to be extra stressed out thinking about, oh, should I send this to Sean? Should I send this to Lates? If you don't know, send it to both of us. If you have a question about your Zoom profile or something like that, if you're not sure, is this related to teaching or is this an IT question, don't worry about it. Send it to both of us. And the first person, the team or person most appropriate will respond. Also bear in mind that as we move through this, over the course of the next week or so, I'm going to try to respond to your questions as quickly as I can. And the IT questions specifically that you have, it may be a full 24 hours before you get a response. So if it's something that you need immediately, if you're not already, it's a good idea to make that as clear as possible in the subject line or somewhere in your email. So those are just a couple of quick notes about IT support specifically. And then in the interest of time, there are a lot of things that I would like to cover, but I just don't think we're going to have time today. I will almost definitely be doing workshops in the future, but today I'm going to focus almost exclusively on the basics of Zoom and Canvas. That is Zoom in Canvas for faculty and staff who want to do meetings or lecture or anything else. So what I'm not going to have time to talk about are things like Big Blue Button or Proctorio or UT Instapoll or all of the other tools that are available to us as we begin making this transition. Another thing that I think in the interest of time we're going to have to leave off the table for now are more advanced level discussions of Zoom or even things like online teaching and best practices. I'm going to talk a little bit about those things, and if we have time, I'll try to go into as much detail as we can. But in the interest of time and in the interest of making sure we all at least get up to a basic level with Zoom and get the basic questions answered, I just don't think we're going to have time to go into a lot of detail. But as I've already said, I am planning more workshops like this, at least one more later next week, and then in the future as needed. And I will let everybody know about workshops that I'm going to be doing and that LAITS is hosting as well. Okay. So moving on, these are today's topics. I'm going to go into a lot of detail with numbers 2 and 3 on this list. Number 1, I'm going to show you several online resources that we have available here at UT. And then I'm going to show you some basics about using Zoom in and outside of Canvas, because they are very different. And how you use them is going to be different as well. Those of you who are staff are probably not likely to use Zoom within Canvas. Those of you who are faculty are probably going to live in both worlds to some extent, and I'm not really sure how much. And then I'll talk a little bit about lecturing and recording with Zoom and spend some time there probably talking about pedagogy and some of the different best practices that you might consider as we begin transitioning your courses to online. I'll also talk about some equipment that you might want to buy if you don't already have it. Whatever time we have at the end will be spent for Q&A, and then some next steps, like I already mentioned, possible future workshops. Okay, so before I go on and we delve into the things on this list, does anybody have any pressing questions in the chat or in the room? Are there any questions that you're just dying to know the answer to right now? I see Dee raising her hand in the back of the room. Dee.
I didn't come in the very beginning, so are you going to post these slides on your blog?
Excellent. So the question, I don't know if y'all can hear through the microphone, Dee asked, she came in a few minutes late, as some of you may have. So just to reiterate, yes, everything is being recorded. Everything is going to be posted on the school's YouTube channel, on my blog. I will send out links in an email. Maybe later today, definitely sometime tomorrow. Everything that I share today is going to be made available to everybody online just as quickly as possible. Yeah. Okay, chat, are there any other questions from you guys, or are we good to go? Okay, and I'm practicing my teaching best practices. I just counted 8 seconds off in my head. It's a really long time. I'm not used to actually doing that. Okay, so let me take a little drink of water. Times like these, self-care is of paramount importance. Okay. So I'm going to be switching back and forth throughout the remainder of this workshop between this PowerPoint slideshow and a whole variety of resources that are online. So we may run into some technical glitches like we did before where the slides weren't advancing, but we will work our way through these things. So I'm going to switch over to my desktop. And that reminds me of one thing that is one of the interesting features of working with Zoom is there's only so much I can actually show you. Oh, that's unfortunate. Why did that close? Okay. This is going to take a minute, everybody. So get a drink of water, take a breath. I'm going to have to reopen all of these links that I thought were already open. And why? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, this is annoying. I'm going to open these one by one. Wow. All right. Okay, so chat, everybody who is at home or in your offices, can you see a window on the screen with the School of Nursing homepage? Yes, yes, excellent. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to proceed through I had all these open before. For some reason, they closed on me, but that's the magic of technology. Okay, so I'm going to move through 4 online resources that are available to you right now that you may already be familiar with. And just in case you're not, I want to let you know about them. The first is the School of Nursing homepage. Just yesterday, Prati updated our homepage to reflect some of the most recent changes that are happening on campus and let everybody know what's going on. And as you can see from these 3 links that are listed there on the homepage, where you can go to learn more. This update is going to be updated regularly with resources as we go. And right now, if you go to the nursing homepage, there is a link to the School of Nursing online teaching page, which is this page. That's the blog that I maintain, and I'm going to come back to that. And there's also a link to the Faculty Innovations webpage called Instructional Continuity, which you've probably already seen. Does it want to open? It seems like it doesn't want to open for some reason. Okay. So that's the nursing homepage. Those 2 links are going to be a good place to make it as easy as possible for you to go get started finding resources. So if you're not sure where to go on the website, this is our attempt to make it as easy as possible for you to go find the resources that you need. So the next thing is the EdTech blog that I manage. Many of you are already familiar with this blog. I update it pretty frequently with resources for our faculty specifically. And this is where I have been putting resources lately, no big surprise, related to online teaching. If you come to this blog, there are a lot of resources that you can click into and review that I'm trying to update at this point almost every day to make it as easy as possible for y'all to find the information that you need. And if you want to, over on the far right-hand side of this page, there's a tiny little button that says follow. If you click that follow button, it allows you to subscribe to this blog. At least for the time being, it might not be a bad idea to click that follow button, and you'll get an email notification every time there's an update to this blog or a new blog post is created. All right, going back. The next is a page that y'all are probably already familiar with. If you're not, I highly recommend you spend some time familiarizing yourself with this page. The Faculty Innovation Center started working on this page 2 Fridays ago to begin getting us ready for what they're calling instructional continuity. And much like the blog that I just showed you, this page is being updated every single day. It's got information including first steps to begin working on things like your syllabus and your instructional continuity plan, if you haven't already submitted one. And then they've got some suggestions for instructional activities, a toolbox of different resources, and college and school support. So one of the nice things they've done here is if you go to this instructional continuity webpage and you scroll down, every school's person or team providing instructional support is listed, including me, and technology support, LATES. So this webpage has a ton of information. It's being updated all the time. It's a supplement to the blog that I maintain, not something that you should be looking at instead of. I recommend using both of them if you're not already. Okay, so let me go to the fourth resource that I wanted to touch on. And that's the Zoom homepage. Okay. If you're not already familiar with this page, this is a good page to bookmark, become very friendly with. zoom.its.utexas.edu. Live it, love it, be one with it. This is the page that you're going to come to log in to your Zoom account. For our faculty, just like you go to Canvas or canvas.utexas.edu to log into Canvas, this is very much like that. This is the landing page for your Zoom account. There's a hand in the back of the room. Yes, Dr. Timmerman.
Is that true for in or out of Canvas or just out of Canvas?
Great question. I'm going to come back to that, but just to answer that now, I'm going to say this repeatedly. There's a big difference. So I'm sorry, for the people listening at home, the question was, is that the same for in or out of Canvas? And this specifically is outside of Canvas. I will show you how to access Zoom both ways here in just a couple of minutes. This is the page that you would come to if you want to go into Zoom. If you want to get to Zoom in Canvas, you just go to your Canvas course. And I'm going to show you both of those options here in a few minutes. Okay. Another thing that's great on this page is the prominent, I guess you could say, position. zoom@utexas.edu is the email address to which you can send all of your Zoom specific questions. The one exception I will say to that is if you have nursing related instructional questions, you can send those to me. Again, just to reiterate what I said before, if you're not sure, don't worry about it. Send it to both. And if it's instructional, I'll reply. If it's more Zoom specific, they can reply. And then you can also come here for access to a lot of good video tutorials. There are a ton of very short, very simple, useful tutorial videos on using Zoom, not UT specific, but more broadly for the general public. So if you want to get started, there's a ton of Zoom videos. Some of them are going to be maybe not that useful to your specific needs, but it's really a good place to start to get at least a beginner level of experience using Zoom. Okay, so now I'm going to close out of that and move on to the next section here. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the basics of Zoom in and out of Canvas. So Dr. Timmerman, you're reading my mind. You were seeing into the future. So I'm going to start with these four things, and this is probably going to take a fair amount of time. And again, as I mentioned, or just in case any of you didn't hear this, if you have questions as we go through, please feel free to type them into the chat. And any questions that I don't have time to answer here today, I will follow up with you afterward. So specifically, I'm going to talk about accessing Zoom for the first time in and out of Canvas. I'm going to show you some of the basics of using the Zoom homepage, your account page. And then we'll flip over to Canvas and I'll show you some of the same things in Canvas. And then I'll talk about some of the basics and best practices of scheduling meetings in Zoom within Canvas. The basics of scheduling meetings in Zoom are going to be the same whether you're in or out of Zoom. And this is one of those areas where, for those of you, for our faculty primarily, but probably some staff as well, if you're working within Zoom, within Canvas, it's a bit like those Russian stacking dolls. If you ever get confused, you are not alone. It's an abstraction inside of an abstraction. So if you get lost or you get, kind of thrown off, don't worry. It's happened to me many times already in the months since we started using Zoom, and especially now that we've integrated Zoom into Canvas. It does take some getting used to. So, give yourself a little bit of patience. Just breathe, do whatever self-care techniques you personally prefer to use. You're not alone. If you start feeling like I'm not understanding this or anything like that, it's not you. It just takes practice. It takes practice learning how to use these online tools. It took us practice getting ready to use Canvas. It's going to take us some practice getting ready to use Zoom. Okay, so that said, I'm going to go back one so that I can go to the Zoom homepage here. Oh, and before I do, a special note for those 19 or so of you who already have Zoom accounts through the School of Nursing. There's a couple of you here with me in the room, quite a few of you listening at home. I've already sent an email to those of you who have Zoom accounts through the School of Nursing. And I'm going to follow up with you probably repeatedly as time goes on. The suggestion right now from ITS is that you stop using your personal account and use the UT account that you could access through Canvas. I have 2 Zoom accounts and it's a little bit confusing, and some of you may already as well. So if you have a UT Nursing Zoom account, then when you go to this page, zoom.its.utexas.edu, that's going to prompt you to create a new account through UT. One of the ways that you'll know the difference is one of them will say on your account page, School of Nursing, and one of them probably will not. I say probably because I'm not 100% sure. We're going to live in 2 worlds, unfortunately, but there's only 20 of us. So the rest of you, if you don't know what I'm talking about with nursing Zoom account and UT Zoom account, just ignore it. You have a UT Zoom account. There are a few of us who started using Zoom back in August, and we are going to negotiate the transition to get our accounts into the full UT account sooner or later. But for now, just go in through Canvas. That's probably the easiest solution. As you go in to Zoom specifically, so now I'm going to back up and start over sort of from the beginning and pretend like you've never accessed Zoom before. You're a UT student, staff, or faculty, and you now have free access to a pro Zoom account. So if you've never logged in before, you would just come to zoom.its.utexas.edu and click the login button. When you do, it's going to ask you for your EID and password, just like it does in Canvas or UT Direct or anywhere else. And at this point, for those of you who are, there may be some of you who are sort of following along, logging into Zoom with me. I don't recommend doing that. If you're trying to follow along and you're trying to create a Zoom account, or you try to do any of the things where I'm going to do as we go, I don't recommend it. Just watch. One of the reasons is because we're in a shared Zoom meeting, and you can only be in one Zoom meeting at a time. So especially when I get to the point of beginning to schedule things, and we get up close to the point of opening a Zoom meeting, we can't do that. So just watch, follow along. As I mentioned before, take notes. But after this point, just follow along. As much as I would like for everybody to be able to do this hands-on in the interest of keeping us all in this Zoom meeting together and not trying to troubleshoot issues for 40 people remotely, Just use your imagination as best you can, I guess, is my advice. Okay, so I'm not going to save that. So when you enter your EID and password, it's going to bring you to the Zoom website and to your Zoom profile. As I mentioned before, there's Zoom and there's Zoom in Canvas, going to Dr. Timmerman's question. We're not in Canvas yet. This is the Zoom homepage for your profile, or in this case, my profile. As you can see here, it says School of Nursing, and it tells me the account number and a whole bunch of other information. I'm going to move the camera here. There's a lot of information on this page, and I'm going to gloss over a lot of that information. Some of the more important things are in the upper right-hand corner here. When you come into your Zoom account, you can schedule a meeting to take place in the future. You can join an existing meeting, or you can host a meeting. So if you wanted to just start a meeting right away with somebody, let's say one of your students emails you and says, I have some questions. You can host a Zoom meeting right away. And this is probably the easiest way to do that. You can do it with video on, off, or you can just share your screen. I'm not going to go into detail about what those different things mean. My advice to you is to get in Zoom when you're, after this workshop, to get into Zoom and try it yourself. The best way to learn this technology is probably through practicing it alone and with groups. If you want to schedule a meeting, you can click the schedule link here, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. The basics of scheduling a meeting in Zoom are the same here, whether we're in Zoom or once we're in Canvas. So I'm going to stop with the scheduling here because it's going to look almost identical once we get into Canvas. And then I want to talk just briefly about some of these details over on the left-hand side. These are your profile links. So in your profile, you can do things like put in a picture. Don't get crazy. This is a professional organization. You know, you can put in an avatar, but probably your students, you probably don't want them putting in, you know, their Tinder profile picture. You can click the Meetings tab. And this is also going to look very much the same once we get into Canvas. This is where you would come to see meetings that you've scheduled. This is the meeting we're in right now. Previous meetings, personal meeting room, meeting templates. Those are all options that are available on the Meetings tab. There's also a Webinars tab. The Webinars feature in Zoom is still being worked out UT-wide. I don't know if we have access to it yet or not. One of the things that you've probably heard me mention is recordings. You can record your sessions in Zoom, and if you've recorded a meeting, that's where you would come to find the recording. As you can see, this one is listed with a whole bunch of files. The recordings are organized in Zoom in chunks, so to speak. So they are right now being processed. Once it's all done, Zoom is going to collapse them into fewer files. So this may look like a whole lot of stuff for what's only been a 30-minute workshop so far. Yeah, there's a question in the room.
Sharon had a question on chat.
Question on chat. Let me go to chat real quick. Bear with me, everybody. There are some questions. Sharon, can you change between sharing screen and other options within a meeting? Yes and no. That's a good question, Sharon. One of the, and Gendy, I'm going to answer your question here in just a moment. There's a bunch of Canvas specific questions that I'm going to hold off on. Can you change between sharing screen and other options within a meeting? Yes and no. The sharing options in Zoom take getting used to. I highly recommend that you pair yourself up or get into a group and just start using it together. I can't think of a better way for you to learn. Watching me use it is going to be different because you can't really interact with Zoom the way you need to if you're watching me host a Zoom meeting. The simple answer to your question is you can share most things. If you open up the control panel and you click you should see the green share button. Bless you. I can share things with you because I'm the host. When you click that share button, if you're the host, you'll see things that your participants won't necessarily. So it's a little bit tricky to talk about to show you what you can share, because I can't show you everything through Zoom that the people here in the room can see. It's a bit of a weird virtual world that we're in. I'm sorry if that doesn't quite answer the question, but there are some things that we'll just have to kind of work through. I'm going to come back to a lot of these questions, but there's another one that's pretty simple, and I'm going to address this again in just a moment. Your students do not have to install anything. You do not have to install anything. Zoom works entirely on the cloud. If you want to, you can install the Zoom desktop client. The same is true for your students, but they do not have to install anything. Your students will have to create an account, but that will almost be taken care of automatically, because, let me go back, if I sign out, when I entered my EID and password, if you haven't already done that, when you enter your EID and password, the system is pretty smart, and it's going to recognize you as a new user, and it's going to automatically create your new account for you. So when you come into Zoom for the first time, that process sort of happens somewhat automatically. It's going to be the same way for your students, as I understand it. Okay, so that's a very quick overview of the Zoom homepage for the Zoom homepage, sorry. Trying to multitask is cognitively difficult. Okay, and some of the basics of the homepage. Now I'm going to switch over to Canvas and getting into Zoom in Canvas. And I'll go into a little bit more detail there and talk about things like scheduling meetings. Okay, so now let me go back over to the web. I'm going to go to canvas.utexas.edu and enter Canvas. Okay, so for staff members, just pretend like you're in Zoom and not Canvas. This is maybe going to be a little bit weird, but I'm mostly going to focus now on faculty interests and using Zoom within Canvas. For faculty and staff who use Canvas, this should be something that you're used to seeing. This is my Canvas homepage. You can just pretend like you're seeing your own. When you go into any of your Canvas courses, you will now see, I'm going to use my testing playground as an example. You will now see, by default, on the lower left-hand corner, Zoom is already enabled for all of your Canvas courses. If you want to, you can move the Zoom link up onto the navigation so it's higher on the screen. If you have questions about how to do that, let me know and I can help you edit the Canvas page. But Zoom is automatically enabled for every single Canvas course. To get into Zoom for your Canvas course, you literally just click the link. And if you're already logged in, it's going to bring you straight to your Zoom page. I need to back up a little bit because I want to show you guys something that you'll probably see when you come in. So I'm going to close this and I'm going to start over. I apologize, everyone. I'm going to try to create as much as possible the real world environment. What I need to do is log out of my Zoom account. Okay. When you come to log into Zoom, that's a screen that you should see. Now I'm going to go back over to Canvas. I apologize for any confusion that might be happening right now. Working in real time on the internet on Zoom takes practice. I'm probably going to say that again. Okay, I'm going to go back into Canvas now. And now I'm going to click into my testing playground class. And I'll click the Zoom link. So that's going to bring me, oh, it brought me straight in. Okay. Confusing. The first time you come to your Canvas course, you should see a screen that pops up and says, it asks you for authorization. Just click authorize. Some of you who use Canvas with some of our other apps that are available are probably used to this authorize screen. Just go ahead and click authorize. Then once you do, it should automatically bring you to your Zoom profile homepage. If I didn't go through it too quickly, or if you remember, you can probably see this page looks very much like the My Meetings page on Zoom. And that's exactly where we are. One of the differences is this. We are in Zoom for this Canvas course specifically. So this is one of the things that y'all are going to need to keep in mind. Once I start scheduling meetings in Zoom, they're for this course specifically. So my students in my other course, they won't have access to them. So if you wanted to schedule a class session for your course, this is where you would do it. If you wanted to schedule something like office hours for all of your students, you could do it here, but you probably shouldn't. You should probably do that on your main Zoom account outside of Canvas. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, the longer you're in both of these worlds, hopefully it will become apparent. Okay, another chat question. Sharon, it's my understanding that you do not need to authorize every single course, but as I mentioned before, things are changing quickly on campus. I was not expecting to just come straight into Zoom when we did just a moment ago. I thought I had to authorize the course every time I log in. That has changed since yesterday. So I will tentatively say, yes, I believe you have to access every course. Okay, and I'm going to hold off on all these other questions. Great question, Donna, and everyone else. As much as I would like to get into things like guest speakers and other things, if we have time, and I think we will, I'm going to come back to those questions. Okay, so now I want to talk about scheduling a meeting in Zoom. As you can see, this is the Zoom meetings page for this course. So any meetings that I had already scheduled would appear here. As you can see, I haven't scheduled any meetings for my testing playground class. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and click schedule a new meeting. And then when I do that, it brings me to the schedule a meeting page. Hopefully many of these things will be self-explanatory, and I leave it to you to experiment and practice with these things to figure out what's going to work best for you and your classes. But I'm going to walk through and tell you about some of the things that I know from my somewhat limited experience to be sort of best practices and recommendations. Okay, first is the topic. By default, the topic is the name of your course. It's probably, for your mental benefit, a good idea to leave something like the course number in the topic. Because if you have two courses, let's say you have N224 and N132, if you schedule a meeting in one of those courses, then you don't include the number and you go to your main Zoom account, you might not be able to distinguish one from the other. So putting something like the course number in the topic is, I think, the easiest way, at least that I can think of, to help you keep a clear distinction between meetings in different classes. Beyond that, you can call it whatever you want to. The description is an optional field. You can enter as much or as little information here as you think necessary. The description, you can use it for lots of different purposes. It doesn't have to be a novel. It doesn't have to be anything at all, but sometimes it's helpful to put in some information. When it's helpful, I'm still figuring that out as well, but it's not a bad idea to at least put in some information, especially in the beginning, to let people know like what the purpose of the meeting is, or something along those lines, or maybe what the meeting is not. When is hopefully apparent. It's when the meeting is expected to begin. You can change the date and time just by clicking into it. You can schedule as far in advance as you need to. You cannot schedule a meeting to occur in the past. You can schedule it to begin at any time. You can schedule a meeting time to begin in the past, but it can only start today. I don't know why that is. It's a little bit weird, but anyway. So if you needed to schedule a meeting that started 15 minutes ago, you could do that. And then AM and PM. The duration is also something that you can change. The duration can, I believe, be as short as you need it to be. If you need a 5-minute meeting, no problem, go right ahead. And I believe it will allow up to 24 hours. I do not recommend recording a 24-hour meeting, but you can hold a meeting that runs for hours and hours. And I don't think it's listed here. That reminds me of something that may be a question that some of you are going to have, especially those of you with larger classes. Campus-wide, per meeting, we have a maximum limit of 300 participants. So for the School of Nursing, I don't think there's much chance we're going to run up against that limit. We can have up to 300 people in one Zoom meeting. So that can be just one person. It could be you recording a PowerPoint, or it could be you and your division, or it could be you and your 67 students in your course. Okay, time zone is going to be filled in automatically. If you want to, you can check this box to make it a recurring meeting. So if you're doing office hours every day, you could fill that in. If you're doing a daily check-in with your students or anything along those lines, you can click recurring meeting, and then that opens up a set of additional questions that you might want to answer. Do you want it to be every Tuesday and Wednesday, or however you want it to recur? Registration. If you check this box, it will require people to register in advance. For our purposes, I don't recommend using registration. If we ever did something like a webinar, maybe we would want it for that. But for your students, for your meetings that you're going to be having, you probably don't need this. Video is the next section. And these are important. The host by default is turned off. You can turn it on once you get into the meeting if you want to. If you are the host of the meeting, I recommend turning on your video by default. The participants are also automatically or by default turned off. They can also enable or turn on their video once they get into the meeting. A note about should you have them turn on their video or not. If it's a small group, if it's a meeting, if you're meeting with your division or your level or some small group of faculty or a team meeting for staff or anything like that, turn your video on. Everybody should turn your video on for small groups. If it's more than about a dozen people, I recommend turning it off for a couple of reasons. One, it gets confusing. Two, it puts an additional stress on the bandwidth. I don't know if we're going to run into problems with bandwidth, but just in case, it's not a bad idea to turn off the video, and you can hear each other just fine. Along with that is the audio. So the next section, the next option is that you can enable it just for a telephone call, computer audio, or both. By default, both are enabled. And when people are sent the invitation, there is also a phone number that they could call into. But because so much of what we're doing is done online now, both are enabled by default, and you can enable it for only computer audio. The meeting options are also something that you'll want to play around with to get used to what's just exactly what's right for you and your students or your team. If you want to, you can require a password for the meeting. I don't recommend it for most meetings. It's one additional step or hoop that people will have to jump through. Especially now, I don't recommend putting hoops in front of people. You can enable people to join the meeting before the host starts the meeting. That's a good idea. Because if people come at 2 minutes before the meeting starts and maybe you're running late, letting them come in early will at least let them not stress out about, oh, I have to sit here and wait and stare at the screen until it starts. If you let them join early, it tends to reduce anxiety in your attendees just a little bit. By default, participants will be muted upon entry. You can turn that off if you wish to. You can enter a personal meeting ID if you want. I'm not sure if that's really necessary. I don't recommend it. If you want to, you can enable a waiting room. For bigger meetings, this might be useful, but for our purposes, I'm not really sure. And then if you check the last box here, it'll record the meeting automatically as soon as you begin. If you want to record your Zoom meeting, this is probably the simplest way to start and make sure it gets recorded. Or if you didn't check this box, you can begin recording the meeting by clicking the record button that's on that black control panel at the top or the bottom of the screen. You can start recording a meeting at any point. And then at the very bottom, alternative hosts. This is going to be an interesting tool that I think is probably pretty useful for us. This would allow you to invite another person who could take over the hosting duties. The host is the person who can mute and unmute people at will and also turn over hosting abilities to other people, like allowing you to share your screen. This is something you might want to do if you have a guest presenter. The alternative host is also somebody who can give the presentation in lieu of you, the person who's scheduling it. So if you're a staff person and you're scheduling meetings for another person, you can enter that person as the alternative host. So somebody like Bart, if you're scheduling meetings that the dean is actually going to run and you're not going to run them for her, you can make her the alternative host after she has already enabled her Zoom account. And then she would be able to start the meeting without you needing to be there. These are some things that have already occurred to me that we may want to take advantage of.
I wonder about, I tried to do this with Eddie because we're co-teaching a class. I put his name in and it said it didn't recognize him. I don't know if I need to do something on the back end.
So I don't know if y'all can hear. The question is about entering somebody who probably should already be in there but didn't show up. This is probably going to take a little getting used to. I am going to just enter you, Dr. Sumter, if I can type correctly. It's K or C? Okay, sorry. Okay, it wants the email address. So I'm going to just pretend like I know that it's D. Sumter.
Or you could do danica.sumter@utex.
Okay, it recognizes that email. So we have just learned something in real time, ladies and gentlemen. This email alternative host text entry box does not have the predictive element like UT Box does. So if you just start typing in something, it's probably assuming that you know the full email address. Once it's completely typed in, then we can start. Uh-oh. As soon as I clicked save, it gave me an error message that that email is not tied to a user of Zoom. It may be not a user of Zoom on the UT account.
Oh, maybe that's it.
So we're playing with this in real time, so we're figuring things out as we go.
So I have to have a UT Zoom account, and then maybe that's where it's pulled.
That's right. You have to have a UT Zoom account, and that's where it's going to pull the account information from. So if I don't know Eduardo's full UT account email address, it may be a little bit tricky. So this may be something that we have to work through as we prepare, to do these meetings and set people up to be our alternative hosts.
So Sean, if I do,
It's going to be quite as seamless as it is in systems like UT Box, where you can just type in somebody's name and it pre-populates the EID email from that. Maybe one day we'll get there. There's another question. Yeah.
Just in the chat, Janet Amy said EID in Texas.
Okay. So you can apparently use the EID and the UTX's email. So I'm going to leave that for later. That is good to know. That sort of assuages some of my concerns, but I'm going to set that aside for now as a let's look into this later on, and I'll follow up with everybody once I figure out a more reasonable answer from the IT folks. And there was, do you have a question?
I'm curious about guest speakers who are not within UT in the community.
That's an excellent question. Thank you. I knew somebody was going to ask that question. The question is about guest speakers who are not part of the UT community. The simple answer right now is I have no idea, unfortunately. If we are in a Canvas course And remember, right now I'm in a Canvas course. I think the understanding is that I'm only going to be inviting people who are part of that Canvas course. If you wanted to invite a guest speaker, you can invite them from your regular Zoom account. I don't know if you can easily make that person an alternative host yet, but I will try to find out, and we'll try to get a more reasonable answer. There are probably other questions in chat. I'm going to come back to those in the interest of moving forward, but I will not forget about you. Okay, so I'm going to save my meeting. And so now once I save it, you see a few different options available on the screen. At the for those of you who've used Zoom, all of these are hopefully looking familiar. For those of you who haven't, at the top of the screen, you have a few of these options that would allow you to save a file to Google Calendar, Outlook, or Yahoo Calendar. So if you wanted to, you can save it to your calendar. There's also an invitation. If you click the copy invitation link, you can copy all of that text and paste it into an invitation. And then below that, or off to the side from that, here's the URL of the meeting that I just created. This is the URL that's probably the simplest way to get into the meeting once I start it. And then we have the options down at the bottom. You can delete it and start over. You can edit the meeting once you've created it, and you can start the meeting. For now, though, I'm going to go back to my meetings page, and now we see the meeting that I just created, right? It shows up here on my course meetings page. Students would also see this page. The students in this Canvas course would also see this page.
So would we also need to send them an invitation?
Nope,
No.
you don't. Thank you for asking. You do not need to send your students an invitation, and there are several reasons why. In Canvas, this is one place where they would be able to see the meeting. They can just like you, they could go to the Zoom link and they would see the meetings listed here. In addition to that, Canvas automatically did several other things. So I'm going to go back to my home page. And let's remember, this meeting is called S-White Testing Playground. The meeting is also added to the course summary. If you use this page as your syllabus, the Canvas syllabus page that automatically lists all your assignments, it's automatically going to be listed there. This course has a ridiculous number of assignments, but here you see that's the meeting that I just created. It will automatically be added to this list. So that's another place where your students would see it. It's also available on the course calendar. So in the interest of not leaving this specific Canvas course, when you go into the calendar, students will also see a link for this Zoom meeting and all the other things that are coming up for their other classes. And then I believe it's also, if I go to the student view, I'm going to click over to that. I think it's also visible to students in the to-do list for students. Yeah, over on the home page, on the right-hand side, on the to-do list, that's where they'll see it listed as well. So for your students, if you schedule meetings, there are several places where they will be able to find it. Invariably, there will be questions, and each of them will probably figure out a way that they like to get into your meetings. But you don't have to send them an invitation. There are several things already happening in Canvas that are putting invitations in place. However, it's not a bad idea once you start scheduling meetings like this to probably send an announcement to your course and just let them know, hey, guys, I scheduled a meeting in our class to happen next Tuesday. It's on the schedule. It's on the syllabus page. It'll be in your to-do list. You can tell them where you think best for them to click into the Canvas course to access that meeting, or you can just put in the URL that we created with the meeting in an announcement. There's a lot of different ways you can send meeting notices or invitations to your students, but you don't have to send them that invitation email.
Karen has a good question. Will all of our meetings that we set up be on our dashboard to-do list? Like I don't have to go into each course, I can see all of mine there.
Good question. Will all of my meetings show up on my Zoom account dashboard? Yes. So if you've created meetings in 4 different Canvas courses, and then you leave Canvas and you go to your Zoom account, you'll see all of them there. Now, that I think brings up a question that might also get asked eventually, which is, can you create meetings for your Canvas courses from your Zoom account? No, I do not think so, and I don't recommend it even if you can. When you're in your Zoom account, you're creating meetings in Zoom. Think of it like a meeting for everybody. If you're in Canvas in Zoom, it's just that one Canvas course. So this is another one of those situations where you'll have to kind of keep track of those Russian stacking dolls. And either you're in Zoom or you're in Zoom in Canvas. Yeah, question.
Would it be better to create it in the Zoom platform and not Canvas if you have a guest speaker?
I think so. So the question is, would it be better to create it outside Canvas on the Zoom homepage if you have a guest speaker? I think probably so. Like in lieu of more experience doing that personally, I think probably so. That's my instinct. Okay, so those are some of the basics of scheduling meetings and what it will look like on Canvas for your students. Once you start a meeting, whether you're in Canvas or you're doing it from your Zoom homepage, it opens up Zoom and you're in a Zoom meeting, just like we are right now. And one of the difficulties is I cannot show you what that looks like because we're in Zoom right now. We can't replicate this environment while we're inside this environment. It's like turning 2 mirrors to face each other. It just creates a situation that's impossible to deal with. So yet again, as I mentioned before, when it comes to doing these meetings, I cannot recommend highly enough that you just get in and start playing with it and do it yourself. Okay, so moving on, I think I've covered at least many of the things over here. Yeah, Zoom, Zoom in Canvas, and scheduling in Canvas. There's a lot more I would love to cover. Unfortunately, we just can't get into too much detail. But hopefully for those of you who are starting to learn how to use this tool, you've at least got a little bit of an idea to help you begin some, let's call it self-directed learning. So I'm going to move on here and change pace and talk a little bit about things that are going to require you to practice using Zoom. And like I mentioned, we don't have much time, but I do recommend as much as possible that you practice using Zoom by yourself in small groups within, whatever your community is, whether it's people in your level, maybe people that you teach a course with, whatever the case may be. I'm going to say this again. I mentioned it before. I am available to help you, as are lots of other staff people in this building. So for faculty, if you're trying to figure out, who do I work with? Who do I practice with? We are working that out. I'm going to be sending out a survey later today to try and address exactly that question. There are lots of staff people here who may have an hour or two to help you and a couple other faculty practice in Zoom so that you can get some experience conducting these meetings, recording your lectures, etc. I'm going to show you some screenshots in lieu of being able to show you what a real lecture looks like. Because, like I mentioned, we can't start a Zoom meeting once we're already in a Zoom meeting. So, but I did take some screenshots the other day while I was sitting at home. God, that was just yesterday. So I'm gonna ask you again to use your imagination, and I'm gonna share some screenshots with you that will hopefully at least give you an idea of what to expect. So these are in no particular order. I'm going to scroll through. Okay. And I'll come back to those that I just showed. Let me stretch my legs just a little bit here and try not to cut my head off. Okay. So I'm going to talk in general terms about Zoom meetings, not only for the purpose of lecturing like you might, but also conducting group discussions. Y'all are probably going to do a lot of different kinds of things in Zoom. And I'm going to leave it to you to work through, with my help and everybody else's, the best way, the best solution for your particular course or your particular needs in Canvas. But I'm going to walk through some examples to at least begin giving you some idea of what things look like and where to look on the screen once you are in Zoom. So when you're in Zoom, if you're in a meeting in Zoom, it looks kind of like you see it on the screen if you're in what's called the gallery view. So some of you have already done meetings, and it kind of looks like the Brady Bunch. It's a bunch of equally sized video screens that all show up the same way on the screen. This isn't the only view, and you don't have to project your presentation or your group meeting this way, but this is the most common view if you're having a discussion. The idea is, let's talk, whether it's 2 people or 9 people in this case. This is what a meeting would look like in Zoom. Everybody can talk, everybody can share documents. The person who is currently talking is highlighted in green like you see here in the middle. And as people switch over back and forth, they're green, and then the next person is green, and then this person up here is green, and so on. So that's what a group meeting looks like. And that's what you would see if you click on what's called, like I mentioned, the gallery view. If you have a really big meeting, it starts to look something like this. So for those of you who teach relatively large to really large classes, if you're going to try to do anything in Zoom, I don't recommend the gallery view because it gets a little weird because there's so many people in the room. Instead, what you can use is what's called the presenter view. The presenter view makes whoever's speaking larger on the screen, and then it shrinks the other people who are not speaking and puts them in a bar either across the top or along the side. So if you're giving a presentation, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour or however long it might be, the presenter view is probably going to be better so they can focus on you and not that tiny little thumbnail of you in the upper left-hand corner. So these are 2 screenshots I took at home. This is an example of what it would look like with 2 people in gallery view. And this is an example of what it would look like in the presenter view. And this brings up another thing that you can do. You can be one person in a meeting twice, just not on the same account. Which brings me to your digital devices other than your laptop and your home computer. There is a Zoom app for iPhones and Android devices. It works fantastically well. You can join a Zoom meeting with your phone. You can host a Zoom meeting with your phone, but I wouldn't recommend it because it gets a little tricky. But your students, maybe your students have an old laptop or they have bad connectivity or who knows what. They can use Zoom to connect with you. And when you're at home, I learned this, you can use your phone and your laptop and connect with yourself in a meeting just to get a little bit of practice of what things look like. It might be a little weird for those of you who've never done online testing or IT testing. It gets a little strange, but you can do it. The Zoom app is, if I didn't say this, it's free. You can get it on, the whatever it's called, the Apple Store, and the other one, I'm drawing a blank on actual names of things right now. But I recommend you install it. When you first log in, it will also prompt you to enter your EID and password just like you would if you logged in through the UT webpage. Did you have a question?
You as the host dictate what everybody sees. So if
Yes.
you choose presenter view, then everybody will see presenter view.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Good question. So in case y'all didn't hear, the question is, does the host dictate what audience members see? Not really, not entirely. It's a little bit tricky. So I'm recording this session right now. So what y'all see on the screen in the room is what I see on my screen. But depending on the meeting, the viewer can also control whether or not they see it in gallery view or presenter view. So you might want to tell your students, if you're doing a lecture, say, you can tell your students, okay, everybody click over to presenter view. I'm going to open up my PowerPoint and start lecturing. But if it's more of a discussion, you can say, hey guys, let's do presenter view. And that way you could see everybody in the Brady Bunch style. Okay, in addition to that, I wanted to share with y'all some of the things that I've mentioned, and I don't know how easily you'll be able to see this as it's kind of small. There's a lot going on this screenshot. While I was preparing some resources, I took a screenshot of everything on my computer. The desktop, an open Zoom meeting, an open PowerPoint slide, a whole lot of things. Because if you're using this in an instructional situation, you're probably going to have a lot of things open on the computer that you're using, just like I do right now. You might have a PowerPoint, you might have a Word document, you might have a web page open, and you're going to have Zoom open. It's a good idea to open all of that stuff first, and then start your Zoom meeting. As you saw here, sometimes technology is weird. For some reason, this is an older laptop, so I'm going to assume that the issues I had earlier are because of Old Reliable here is maybe ready for retirement. I'm not sure, but technology works most of the time, and sometimes it doesn't. But most of the time, you're going to want to open everything up before you begin your meeting. And then you begin your meeting, and that's what you see here, the Zoom window that's open here. So I'm going to go around the screen and just mention a few things just to make sure that I cover them in the absence of being able to do this in a different way. On the Zoom meeting, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a tiny little green lock. That means that it's encrypted. All of our Zoom meetings are encrypted. They are FERPA safe. They are HIPAA safe, to the best of my knowledge. It is an encrypted meeting. So you don't have to worry about, safe online communication. That's one of the best things about Zoom. It's totally safe. Up in the right-hand corner, you have the enter full screen mode, and then the, close buttons like you would see in most anything else. And then across the bottom, or at the top, if you've told it to put it at the top, you have the control panel for Zoom. Now, whether you're the presenter or you're an audience member will determine how much or how little you see in that control panel. But the basic controls are all down there. You can mute your microphone, you can change your microphone, you can stop the video, you can turn it on, you can change the video source, you can invite people to your meeting, you can manage the participants. If you're the moderator, you might want to mute or unmute people or start their video cameras for them. The share button is very useful. It's going to be very important for y'all, and I'm going to skip ahead to show you that. When you click the share button, this is the window that you'll see. And I know it's not easy to see on the screen right now. It's kind of low resolution. I'm going to try to send some screenshots. And the more you do this yourself, the easier it'll get. What the share screen does is it says, what do you want to share? The available options are everything that's already open on your computer, one at a time. Like you see here, I could open this Word document or a PowerPoint, the Zoom meeting. You can also connect wirelessly to your smartphone. I haven't tried that yet. I don't know how easy or hard it is. There's also a whiteboard feature, and then the desktop screen. There are also some advanced sharing features. One of the really cool advanced sharing features is that you can share a second video source. So if you wanted to, this is one of the things that I think might be a real world application for faculty who like to use things like the document camera. I don't know if the second video source works in our classrooms, but I know that you could connect a second webcam and have that webcam pointed downward at a piece of paper as if it were a document camera. So you can sort of mimic the doc cam experience wherever you might be. It'll allow you to use a secondary camera. Or if you wanted to, you could enable the secondary camera maybe to point at the classroom full of students. I guess actually, I take that back. We're social distancing. We're not going to be doing that anytime soon. Forget what I just said. Okay. And then if you have recorded a session, I'm going to move the video of me. This is kind of what your recording is going to look like once it's done. If you've recorded your PowerPoint slideshow and you giving a presentation, this is more or less what it's going to look like. It's going to show the PowerPoint, it's going to show a small box with a video of you, and that's it. Right? Your recording isn't going to include all of the things that happen during your meeting. And this is one of the areas that can be a little bit confusing. What gets recorded isn't everything that happens on the screen. I leave it to you to practice to get comfortable with what's going on in Zoom, and practice recording as well so that you get some experience with all of those different features. And that brings me to the recording.
Sean, real quick, before you go in the recording, Sean,
Yeah,
Sean,
Vin.
this is Vin. Real fast, before you go in recording, on the share function, is it only for the presenter or the person, the host to share, or can, if you have students and they want to share with each other, could they do that? Or if they want to share with the class?
That's a good question, Vin. If students or other participants in the video want to share, can they? I believe they can't, but I don't remember off the top of my head. I think if you want them to be able to share things, you can make them the host.
Or whenever
And-
I click share, it says I cannot start screen sharing while someone else is sharing. So if you stop, maybe I.
Perfect, thank you. So Dr. Sumter just mentioned she tried it out here in class. If I'm sharing my screen and somebody else in the meeting clicks share, it says you can't share right now because somebody else is sharing. Thank you for doing that. If you want them to share, you can stop your share and enable them as host, and that would allow them to start sharing their screen. Okay.
All right, thank you.
So I'm going to talk now a little bit about recording. If you want to record in Zoom, the record option is available. I believe if you click the little 3 dots here where it says more, then you'll see the option to begin recording. I'm already recording the session that we're in, so I'm not going to see it in this session. You can record any or all of your Zoom meetings. And I want to go back over to Canvas now. Whether you are starting a meeting from your Zoom account online, or you've begun a meeting in your Canvas course through Zoom, you can record as much or as little as you want to or need to. You can record short presentations. If you want to, you can record your PowerPoints. If you want to do a voiceover PowerPoint, you can do that using Zoom, and it would just be you and your PowerPoint and nobody's there. That's one way that you can begin recording material for your students to consume in an asynchronous manner. Or, if you want to do a flipped teaching model once we go online, that may be one of your best options. You can record your presentations for students to watch later. Or if you're doing a live presentation, you can also record it so that students can watch it later. You have both of those options. So I'm going to go over back into my course here. Yeah, question.
If you pre-record your lecture, then do you create a meeting where students then can come and see your pre-recorded lecture?
That's a great question. So the question is sort of about pre-recording and is it a meeting? No, it's if you've started a meeting and you've created a recording from it. Let's say you did this yesterday. Like you recorded a 30-minute presentation yesterday and I'm a student and I want to watch it today. The meeting has already ended. It's already taken place. The recording, however, would be available here in the Cloud Recordings page on your Canvas course.
Okay.
It does take a little bit of getting used to, but all the meetings that you create in your Canvas course are going to be listed here. Older ones, like if you did one yesterday, it would be listed under previous meetings. And then upcoming meetings is things from now onward. And then any recordings that you do are going to be available in the Cloud Recordings page.
For longer than 14 days.
For longer than 14 days. Yes, good question. In addition to the recording, Dr. Gaskamp, did you have a question?
But what she could do is have them watch it and then come together as a meeting to discuss.
Great idea. Yeah, you could do a video recording of you giving your presentation, have students watch it, and then set up another meeting to bring them together to discuss, for example. Yeah, I think that would be a good way to avoid trying to replicate the in-class experience, if you are at all concerned about the best way to do that. When it comes to recordings, they are available for more than 14 days. As far as I know, they are available in perpetuity unless or until one of two things happens. Either you download your video to save it somewhere else, like UTBox, and delete it, or the unlikely event that all 70,000 of us record enough things that we fill up UT's account. We have terabytes worth of space available, so I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. But theoretically, if all 70,000 of us start recording tomorrow, it could happen. I think it's very unlikely that our students are going to record in Zoom. So I don't think there's any reason to worry about your recordings, you know, filling up the maximum. If that were to happen, right now, given our School of Nursing Zoom account, I believe the way it happens if we reach our max is the oldest ones get deleted first. So your newest ones will still be there. But again, I don't think there's much chance that our videos are going to start getting deleted anytime soon. If every one of you goes out and records 1,000 hours of video, well, okay, maybe so. If thousands of faculty are recording many, many hours, then maybe so. I don't know. I don't want to be alarmist though. You can record in Zoom.
Hi, Sean. This is Kavita. How about tools like Screencast-O-Matic for recording? Because then they really compress the videos to a small size, and that way you can upload it for the students to watch it later.
Yeah, that's a great question. For the most part, I haven't gone into any detail about other tools, but you bring up a great point. So I'm going to stop here and take a little bit of a tangent to talk about other production options, other video recording tools. There are tons. Some of you are using Camtasia. Some of you are using Screencast-O-Matic. Some of you are using QuickTime Player on your Mac. All of those tools are fantastic options. If you are already comfortable using one of those tools, you should probably keep using it. And if you're already recording in those tools and you have a workflow to help you get those recordings to your students, it's probably worth sticking with what you know already works. What I will say about recording in Zoom is this. One of the best things about it, so hopefully I answered your question, Kavita. If you're using any of those online tools and you're comfortable with them, keep doing it. The recordings in Zoom, when they're finished, they're very small files. As I recall, I recorded a 90-minute session previously, and it was like a 250 megabyte file. That's very small for video. Now, it's kind of a pixelated video, so it doesn't look like HD, but I don't expect HD because we're doing, you know, meetings and so on. So the video file is fairly small. One of the best things about recording in Zoom is this. It automatically transcribes your meeting in real time and provides you with a caption file after it's done. So for those of you who are producing recordings, if you want to produce something with closed captioning, Zoom takes care of most of the work for you automatically. And especially now, when our students are at home, they're already stressed out, we want to kind of lower the barriers to entry as much as possible. If you can have closed captioning, all the better. Even for students who don't need it. It's just a good idea.
So if we're not currently recording things, and this is where we're entering into a new world, maybe just learning Zoom would be your recommendation.
Yes.
Okay.
If you're doing this for the first time and you're not using any of those other tools that I mentioned, then You can begin exploring the world of recording your lectures in Zoom. And yeah, I highly recommend it. I think it takes getting used to, but with, like everything, with a little bit of practice, you can produce good quality recorded lectures. They'll be able to see your whole PowerPoint slide. And if you want them to, they'll be able to see a small video of you as you're presenting. And that's a good way to sort of voice over your PowerPoints. If you want to continue doing exactly that and adding...
Sorry, Sean, this is Vin. Did you say that it has a transcription function?
Yes. All of the recordings...
Okay.
Go ahead, Vin.
So is that transcription just real time, or does it go onto like a document that we could read the transcription later as well?
Yeah, good question. So when you're done recording, and again, unfortunately, we are already in Zoom, so I can't show you this in real time. When you record a meeting in Zoom, after it's finished, after you say end recording and end meeting, it's going to produce actually 3 different files. One is an MP4 video file. The second is your caption file. It's a text document. And the third is something else. I don't remember what it is right now off the top of my head, but it's not as useful or fun as those other 2. But yes, you get a document that you can download. And when you come into this page, again, I'm sorry, I haven't produced any recordings in this Canvas course yet, so I can't actually show you. When you, the instructor, click into the details of one of your recordings, you'll see those 3 files listed individually, and you can download them. So if you wanted to, I'm not saying you should, but if you wanted to download your recording from Zoom, and let's say you wanted to upload it someplace like YouTube that also has captioning services, you could upload that captioning file into YouTube with your video, and it's all automatically closed captioned, right? So you get those 2 things together, and it sort of takes care of that piece for you. So if you want to begin exploring that, I highly recommend it. I have only begun sort of putting my feet in, maybe up to my knees. Those of you who have experimented more, you know, please let us know, and I'm sure we will all learn together. Okay. So that's a little bit about recording. Let me go back over here. Okay, something is going on with this laptop. It keeps closing things for some reason. It is old. I believe in you, old fella. Okay, let me get back in here to PowerPoint. Okay, before I move on to equipment. So again, I'm going to scroll down to these, the images that I have here to talk a little bit about some other things that you can do during a meeting or a lecture or anything else that you might do in Zoom. You can poll your attendees. There is a poll function built into Zoom. So those of you instructors who like to use things like Slido or Poll Everywhere or Kahoot or any of the others, you can continue using those. Or you can use the built-in polling function in Zoom. I don't think there's any integration with that polling function into Canvas, but at the very least you can poll your participants that way. And then there's also, the more I've used Zoom and the more I've spoken with other people who use Zoom, especially for large meetings or large sessions, there's the issue of moderating. And some of you here today have kind of helped out. If you're teaching a large session, and by large I mean more than about 12 people, it's a good idea to nominate, volunteer, get somebody to help you and have that person serve as your moderator. Divide the labor. You can do it yourself. I mean, I'm trying, and we can do these things by ourselves. However, if you're trying to teach and you're trying to transfer knowledge and be a subject matter expert, do yourself and your students a favor and don't try to be tech support at the same time. Don't try to keep up with questions in the chat at the same time. have someone else, whether it's a student who's willing to do it, or if you have a TA or another faculty member who can come in and serve as your moderator and take that off your plate so you can focus on teaching and you can focus on the information that you're trying to share with your students.
And what would this moderator do? I mean,
The moderator, okay, good question. The moderator would probably sit in the room with you with a laptop and they would follow along the meeting with you. Kind of just like y'all are here with me today. Just sit in the room, be there, let you know, hey, there's a question on chat. So you don't have to worry about it. Sort of like y'all have been doing for me here. Okay. I'm going to go back, and so that we have some time for Q&A, I'm going to fly through these last couple of things. Okay. Equipment. Everybody's setup is a little bit different. Almost all of your students have laptops with built-in webcams. Most of you do as well. However, many of you are probably going to be teaching from home or some kind of environment more or less like your home environment. Whether you're teaching at home or in your office here, if you don't have one, you need to get a webcam. And you may also need a microphone. If you have a webcam, it's got a built-in microphone. But if you want to do something like a voice over PowerPoint, I recommend buying an external USB microphone to improve the audio quality of your recording. Because if you're doing a PowerPoint voiceover, the microphone in your laptop is teeny tiny. And it's pretty good, but it's not as good as it can be. So you can spend about $20 or $30 and buy a USB plug-in microphone that'll plug right into your laptop and clip onto your lapel. Some links are on my blog. I don't have them with me to share with you right now, but there are links to go to Amazon where you can buy like a $20 or $30 microphone. And then webcams. The webcam that I'm using right now is not the one in my laptop. If I had it, oh, actually I do have a second one. I'm going to hold this up. It's this guy. It's a USB webcam. It's a 1080p, 1080 pixel high definition webcam. It's also got a high definition audio output. It's very good quality. If you want to buy your own, it costs about $60 to $80. And that brings me to something else that I've noticed in the last day or two. Actually, before I get to that, let me not forget something else that's popping into my head. If you don't have a webcam or you need to borrow one, we do have some here in the school. We have 4 or 5 in Ruth Brady's office that you can check out, and we have about the same number, maybe a few more, in the 3rd floor testing center that you're welcome to check out as well. Those are not the kind of webcams I would expect to be used indefinitely. If you need one for a few days, you can borrow one. If you need one for longer than that, try to get one online. You can get them on Amazon or through UT Market. Like I mentioned, this one that I got is very good quality. I love it. It costs about $60 to $80. The other thing I wanted to mention before I took my little tangent was this. I went on Amazon yesterday to see how long it would take to ship a webcam to your house. Things are getting dicey out there, ladies and gentlemen, even on Amazon. So you might have to look at a few different options if you need a webcam. And I'm not saying that you do definitely need a webcam. I'm saying it might be a good idea if you don't have one. And if you go online someplace like Amazon, the majority of webcams that I looked at, the expected delivery date was after April 1st, the 1st or 2nd week of April. So if you need to start producing material now, you can borrow one of the webcams in the School of Nursing for the next few weeks until you get the one that you order. Okay.
Sean, this is Vin. Would you be sending out the specs for both the cam and the microphone?
Yeah, I don't have specifications specifically to send out. I do have some links that are available on one of the posts in my blog, and I will make sure that I send out to everybody a link to that blog post, and that will have links to Amazon where you can find what I recommend as a good middle of the road webcam.
Question,
Yeah,
you talk about sharing PowerPoint slides, how does that work?
sharing
Like what
PowerPoint
you have up
slides.
here.
Okay, so for me to share the slides that I'm showing on the screen, I clicked the share button.
The share screen button.
That's
That
right.
automatically does it and your little video stays there.
If you want to share your PowerPoint while you're in a Zoom meeting, you click the share button and then it opens up this little pop-up window.
Okay, all right,
And then you tell it what you want to share.
thank you,
And then that's what shows up on the screen. And yes, the video as well.
thank you.
Okay, so let me get back over here. It's question time. Wow, why does it keep closing? That's very strange. Okay, question time. I'm going to try to answer as many questions as possible. Like I mentioned, there are a lot of things I may not have time for, but I'm going to just go back up to the top and kind of look through here. If you have questions, please type them in. I'm going to try to get to as many as we have time for. Yes, this will be recorded just in case anybody didn't hear that message. Okay. It will not make any difference which browser you use. Sharon asked, will it matter which browser I use to access Zoom either in or out of Canvas? So I'm going to say two things about that. Well, I already said one. In Canvas, Chrome is still the recommended browser. That doesn't mean you have to use Chrome. If you prefer Safari or one of the others, you can. But Chrome is still recommended. As far as Zoom is concerned, as far as I know, it doesn't care. You can use any browser. They all work just as well, just you know, as effectively, to my knowledge. Let's see. Can we send Zoom messages or invitations to anyone who isn't in our Canvas course? This is a question from Dr. Joyner Rogers. If you want to send a Zoom invitation or anything else to someone who's not in your course, you would have to do that from your Zoom account, not from your Canvas course. Does that make sense, hopefully? So again, going back to what we talked about before, you can go to Zoom on your Zoom account, or you can go to Canvas and go to Zoom that way. If you go to Canvas and go into Zoom there, that's just for your students. So try to keep that in mind. Whenever you're in Canvas, in one of your courses, it's limited to the students in your class. If you're outside of that in Zoom, that's for everybody, for the whole world, potentially. Okay. Students don't have to install Zoom. They can, and I'm going to say a little bit about that. There is a Zoom desktop client that you can install on the desktop of your computer. I don't use it. I just use the web-based application. I find that works just as perfectly well for me personally. If you want to try it out, you're welcome to. If you want to install it on your desktop computer, you will have to contact LAITS to do that. I mean, your office computer. But if you want to use it, you're welcome to. Your students are welcome to, but they don't have to. They can use the Zoom website for everything they will need to do. Janice Hernandez asked, is Zoom offered in our specific groups section within a course that has been merged or has a master page? Good question. So for groups, for Canvas courses that we used to call the master that have been merged, where you have multiple sections, these are usually for clinical courses, where you have multiple sections that are all merged into one with several faculty. It's my understanding that they've been merged, and that is now one class. That's one Canvas course now. So as far as I know, you should only have that one Zoom page available. But if Janice, if you go to log into Zoom, that's going to take you to your Zoom. And if somebody else who's a faculty member in that course clicks Zoom, it's going to probably log them in to their Zoom. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work. So we will play a little bit with that. Carol Delville asked, can we mute people if they have their mic on? Yes, yes you can. Sorry if I haven't been doing that. We should be able to add them to our Canvas course. Okay, Nancy asked, if we use Zoom for a lecture course for more than 10 students, is there an option to create groups where students can interact with each other? Yes. This is something I did not touch on. Zoom has what are called breakout rooms. I didn't go into detail about them because I can't show you what they look like, but I highly recommend you use them for this group interaction. What breakout rooms do is they allow you as the host to create breakout Zoom meetings and assign your attendees to those meetings. So it's like it creates a branch where I can put these people over here and these people over here. And you, the instructor, you can go into each of those rooms independently if you want to, but they can't switch around in the different breakout rooms. And then when you're finished with the breakout, you just bring everybody back into the main meeting and it's all one session once again. Like lots of these things, it does take some getting used to and some practice. So I encourage you to try it out for yourselves. Karen asked, will there be a list outside of each course that compiles all the meetings you might have across courses in one place, both for us and for students? Karen, that's a good question. The answer is yes for you, no for your students. So for you, Karen, or any instructor or staff member, every meeting that you create, if you create it in Canvas or you create it on your Zoom account, it's going to show up on your Zoom account. But your students will only be able to see the meetings in your Canvas course that you've created for your Canvas course. Your students will also be able to see their meetings in their Zoom course, because students can also create meetings. And I know this is a little weird and it's going to get tricky, but hopefully that helps. Myra says that she is available to anyone that wants to practice. Thank you, Myra. How about tools like Screencast-O-Matic? Okay, so that's Kavita's question. Hopefully I addressed that. If you have questions about specific tools like Screencast-O-Matic or Camtasia or any other, please reach out to me individually. Like I said, you are more than welcome to keep using them, but I don't want to get into too much detail here. Carol Delville asked, is it easier to have them use a separate blog or Google Doc to share during a live lecture? That's a fantastic idea. If you are doing a live lecture, having your students sort of crowdsource their notes together on a shared Google document is a fantastic idea. I've only done that myself a few times, so I couldn't necessarily tell you the best way to do it. But if y'all want to try that out, I think it's a great idea. Nancy asked, can students create meetings on Canvas? No, I do not believe they can. Even if I teach in 2 languages for my Spanish course, Zoom has closed caption. Yes, I believe if you're speaking in Spanish, it's going to caption it in Spanish. I have not tried it out in Spanish yet, however, so if you want to try it out, you might be the very first one. So, muy buena suerte. Sharon asked, does closed captioning happen from both in and out of Canvas? Yes. The captioning is happening in Zoom. It just happens that you can access it in Canvas. Karen Johnson said, if I can help anyone moderate, please let me know. We can moderate remotely. Yes, you can moderate remotely, and thank you, Karen. Donna says, Best Buy has great prices and options on USB webcams. Thank you, Donna. I was going to recommend Best Buy. I try to avoid, specific stores, but yeah, if you can, drop by your local big box and see. They might have one on your way home. Nicole Manley says, Zoom does have an option to create breakout rooms during a meeting for those wanting to break up students into small groups. It's been a while since I used that option. Just checked and it is available. Awesome. Thank you, Nicole.
And they can do it automatically for you, or you can do it manually.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Sumter just said they can do it for you automatically, or you can do it manually. When you click the option to do a breakout, it asks you, do you want us to do it automatically? And it will just pick a number of people, and you tell it, I want 5 people in this group, and it will just automatically assign 5 random people to that group. Or you can manually pick, I want this person and this person and this person, and this person will put in this group, and so you can do it much like you can the groups in Canvas.
Can you show us on your screen where this menu is?
On the screen, it's under More option. So for those of you who are at home, I don't think you can see what I'm showing in the classroom right now, but if you want to see the breakout rooms option, it's on the menu screen, the menu bar under More, and then you click Breakout Rooms. And then if I were going to break us out, I would click that and it would ask me, how I want to proceed. Okay. Okay. Patty Solom asked, is Canvas Zoom meeting the optimal platform to host a flipped classroom interactive student-led meeting where students present individual PowerPoint presentations? Great question. I am going to address that, and then I want to make sure I have some time to talk about something that was sent to me by one of our faculty. When it comes to questions like, is X the optimal solution? I'm always going to hedge my bets. I will say to the best of my ability or to the best of my knowledge. If you want to host a flipped classroom interaction or meeting where students present their PowerPoints to you or to each other within a small group, I think Zoom is a fantastic tool for that. I would not recommend doing it without practicing with doing that with yourself and giving your students a chance to practice first. So if you're going to do that, I would not just dive into the deep end. I would recommend giving them a chance to do it, in a low stakes, low stress environment first, and then present their presentations. So hopefully that answers your question. There are a couple other questions, and I think we'll have time to get to them, but I want to make sure that I get to something else because a few of the questions have been about best practices. And I would just want to put this on everybody's radar. I don't want to pretend to suggest that you should teach your coming courses in a particular way or not. I think we're all going to figure out the best way to teach our courses. And I and many of the staff here in the School of Nursing are here to help you figure out the best way for you to teach your course. I don't know if the best way for you to teach your course is to emulate a live lecture as if you were doing this in the classroom, or if it's going to be better for you to pre-record your material and do a flipped model and make it available to your students after the class. I leave that up to you. I think under the circumstances, it's probably a good idea to at least give some strong consideration to a flipped model and maybe at least a hybrid style of class where some of your material is recorded or available for asynchronous consumption. So to that end, I wanted to read this. Usual rules for online or distance learning do not apply now. Our students are in trauma mode. From my recent interactions with them, they are overwhelmed with their personal lives and fear about their future. Their ability to absorb information will likely be significantly decreased in the coming weeks. We have no way of knowing each student's personal situation and their ability to meet at specific times of the day. They may be caring for children or their neighbors' children or their grandparents. Or perhaps they have to start working because their family is low on money. We just don't know. I could not have said it better myself. We don't know. So I leave it up to your judgment. You know what's best for you and your students. We are all here to support each other, and we're all going to support each other even when we get a little bit emotional. So as you go through, give yourself some patience as well. I did not expect to react the way that I am. You probably won't either. And your students aren't either. So keep an open mind, make it as easy on yourself and as easy on them as possible. Dr. Taxis, yes.
If we practice now, and we put something in a course, will our students who are out on spring break all of a sudden start seeing stuff and get confused?
The question is, if we start producing stuff now and putting it into Canvas, will our students who are on spring break see it and get confused? That's an excellent question. I think probably yes. I think probably, so if I were you, what I would recommend is, if you haven't already, send some carefully crafted communication to your students to let them know exactly what your expectations are. Today, tomorrow, Monday the 30th. The clearer we can be with them, the better. If this email is at all accurate, the more we can reduce that anxiety, the better.
So there's no way to make it available on a certain date?
If you record a meeting in Zoom, I do not believe there is a way to make it, to unpublish it until a particular date. I don't think so.
Sean,
Yeah.
would it overwhelm the system for people to create sandboxes just for that practice if they didn't want to alert their students?
That's a great idea. So Dr. Gaskamp asked, would it stress the system to start creating sandbox courses to begin doing these experiments like we're discussing? I don't think it would. I think that would be a great idea. You can create a sandbox and you can start playing around there, and then you don't have to worry about your students seeing something that you don't want them to. Okay, so there are some more questions coming in. I promise I'm going to get follow up with y'all one-on-one, but I also wanted to talk about next steps. So there's a lot going on. I'm going to be sending out emails pretty much every day like I have been. If you're not tired of seeing my emails, you will be before the 30th. I will be doing at least one more workshop like this. I don't know yet when, I don't know yet where. Probably early next week, we'll do another session sort of like this one, and we'll try to dig deeper to answer a little bit more detailed questions and maybe get into the nuts and bolts of Zoom or the nuts and bolts of teaching, whether it was Zoom or just teaching online, the flipped model, and so on. So bear with me a second. I'm going to reopen my PowerPoint because I just want to make sure there wasn't anything else that I left out. And if you're sending in questions, I promise I will follow up with you. Let me just make sure. Yes. As I mentioned earlier, resources are being created on a daily basis, and I'm going to be sending out stuff in emails. I'm also going to be posting things on my blog. There will also be things posted on the Faculty Innovation Center webpage that I talked about before, the instructional continuity page, including tutorial videos for how to use Zoom. So I am not the only instructional support person on campus. There are people like me in all the other departments, and we are collaborating sort of offline to try and figure out the best way to provide all of you with the support that you need. So you can look forward to that. There's going to be more resources coming your way. And then if you want to schedule one-on-one consultations with me or small group consultations with me or with other people, I think it's going to be best to do that in Outlook. In the interest of time, because we are so remotely separated from one another, it's probably going to be the most efficient for you to go into Outlook, find my calendar. It's public, it's shared. You can see all my meetings. They don't say busy, they don't say anything. They will tell you exactly what I'm doing. My calendar is public. I encourage you, if you don't have a reason to do otherwise, to make your calendars public, to make this scheduling a little bit easier on everybody. But if you want to schedule a meeting with me, you can just go into Outlook, find my calendar, and invite me to a meeting. If I'm available, we'll make it happen. And then we can figure out, here's the link to Zoom, or let's do a phone call, whatever you prefer. Just in the interest of not, trying to prevent back and forth emails as we often do. That will probably be a little bit easier for us to coordinate. And I have a feeling if you're going to coordinate a meeting with other staff, that may also be a good idea. Just go into Outlook and try to find them in Outlook and schedule the meeting that way. It'll probably save you some time and hopefully some stress. So like I mentioned, more workshops will be coming as things continue to evolve, and that's really all I have. There are more than 40 of you here, so I really appreciate you coming, and Dee's raising her hand. One more question. Yes, Dee.
I have a question about the students.
Okay.
Are they going to be given a tutorial on how to use Zoom?
That's a good question. So the question is, will students be given a tutorial on how to use Zoom? I'm going to be honest with you, Dee. I think the answer is probably no. We just don't have time. There will be tutorials. There are already tutorials on the UT Zoom webpage that show you things like how to start a meeting, how to log into your account, the very basics. My suspicion, I would love to be proven wrong, my suspicion is that students are going to have to figure some of this out for themselves. Because between now and 8 a.m. March 30th, we're all focusing on making sure faculty are ready to teach. So I could be wrong, but that's my instinct at the moment.
So on the homepage.
Sean, this is Vin. I want to answer Dee's question, or not answer, but just add to Dee's question. So I've been using Zoom in my class, and every time I've used it for the first time, students have been pretty savvy about using it. So there hasn't been like a need to almost to train them. So that's been my experience. They picked it up pretty quickly.
Excellent. Thank you, Vin. Yeah, I find people in general pick it up pretty quickly. I find in class, what I've seen is students are often like, ooh, cool new thing. And sometimes students have questions too. And those students, I think the resources that are available are going to answer most of their questions. I don't expect much more, but I could be wrong. So thank you, Vin. In the interest of time, I'm going to thank everybody for joining me. I know it's been short notice. I really wish we could all be enjoying spring break. If you talk with any faculty, you can let them, or staff who aren't here, you can let them know this is being recorded. I'm going to post the recording online as soon as I can. And I will be doing at least one other workshop soon, and we'll be sending information about that.
Nicole has a pretty good question here about office hours through Zoom. And so do we just set up the Zoom meeting and then students can just join?
That is a fantastic question. Nicole, thank you for that question. I'm sorry that I completely forgot about office hours. I put it in my notes and everything, and I've completely forgotten my notes. So thank you for reading my mind. Yes, office hours. I recommend you set up your office hours in Zoom, not in Canvas. So there may be exceptions to this, but if you're going to, let's say you do office hours Monday 3 to 5 p.m. I would go and set up a recurring Zoom meeting 3 to 5 p.m., every Monday, and then you get the URL from Zoom. Then you can go into your Canvas courses if you want to, and put that in an announcement in each of your individual Canvas courses. So if you've got 3 courses, you would update it 3 times, right? You could also put that URL, if you want to, in your syllabus. Hopefully you're all going to make some updates to your syllabus if you haven't already. I don't know that you want to do that, but that's something you could do. So yeah, I recommend setting up your office hours outside of Canvas entirely until I hear otherwise.
How I might work that, and I wondered about the waiting room. If you could employ the waiting room, and so when a student comes, you meet with them, and then when you're done, you let another one in, but they don't have to necessarily be there. Because I was like, how does that work? So you don't have everyone, all in the same space.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah, so if you've got students kind of coming and going like they really do when they come to office hours, you can employ the waiting room feature of Zoom. So the first student, you let them in the door, answer their questions, the other student waits, and then when one is done, then you let the other one in. Yeah, managing that will be interesting, but I think we will play it by ear. And as I learn more, I will put it on the blog and otherwise share it with all of you. So
When you create office hours, do you invite all of your students?
you don't invite anybody. When
You
the
don't.
question was, when you create office hours, do you invite your students? You don't have to invite anybody to a meeting. You can create a meeting and just create a meeting.
Okay.
And then the URL is the critical thing. You send that URL to the people whom you want to go to the meeting. So that's what you would share with your students. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of practice. If you get in there and you get lost, y'all know how to reach me. I will be working outside the building at home for the most part. So if you need me, you can find my Outlook calendar and you can reach me by email. That's probably the fastest. But I'm happy to meet with y'all as best I can as we figure all of this stuff out. So
Sean,
thank you
this is
all
Chris
very much.
Abiad. Can I ask one last question?
Sure.
So I have an exam coming up, and during office hours, I usually review previous exams with students one-on-one. Is that how am I going to do that, or is that not really going to be possible?
That's a good question, Chris. I'm going to say, when do you expect to give this exam?
A couple of weeks from the 30th. I'm going to move the exam date, but in a couple of weeks.
Okay, let's put a pin in
No,
that
can I, this is
until
Kavita. Sorry, can I just suggest something? How about like setting up individual meetings with students through Zoom? I mean, in answer to Chris Abiad's question, if she wants to go one-on-one, because that was my plan for the office hours, is I'm just going to ask students to set an appointment with me, and then I'll give them a Zoom link. So that way it is only going to be me and the student and nobody else. Is that a good, I mean, would that be too much work for a large class?
Yeah, I think it might work. I'm going to ask everyone to please stop and mute your microphones in the interest of time. Not because I don't want to hear your ideas, I do. But the longer we continue the discussion, the more we're going to get into the detailed questions. Those are excellent questions, and I want desperately to answer them, but we can't do it right now. So please put a pin in that. We can work through that the remainder of this week and next week. I do think Kavita's idea is a good one worth considering, but in the interest of time, not just today, but in general, start writing these questions down, start working together in groups, and start practicing with Zoom. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting now. I thank you all very much for your time. I don't want to be rude. I feel like there's a lot more discussion to be had, but this is as much for my own sanity as yours. So thank you all very much for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm going to send out more information as soon as I have it, later today, tomorrow, etc. And we will continue this discussion. Y'all have had great questions. I look forward to more questions in the next workshop. So thank you all very much.